Well, hello folks, and welcome to the Dieter Melhorn Fishing Podcast. I know this is confusing for you because if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, you see me out on the water on my boat. So if you're listening to it, you're probably hearing some industrial noise in the background. I'm right next to a power plant on Lake Wiley. I'll talk about that here in a second with what's going on here. This may be one of the few podcasts where I actually catch a fish in the middle of it, but I doubt it because part of what I'm going to talk about is what we're going through here with the spawn and when I'm fishing. This is late June and what all's going on there. Here's what I found out. The other thing I'm going to talk about is the boat. I'm back on the Lund. Some of y'all have been asking about it, and I'll give you a little update on everything that's going on there. So hopefully you guys can learn something from all of this stuff I'm going to share. Well, first we'll talk about the spawn. I've been out several days now, getting back out on the water to see what's going on, running a guide trip or two. And what I found is the overall bite is still bad. The widespread bite, the trolling bite, the anchor bite, it's still pretty bad. There are pockets and times when some fish can be caught, and I'll talk about that in a second with what happened yesterday. But overall, it's a slower than normal for the overall year. But this is what happens in June. So we're in an area where I fish at is east of the Appalachians on the Catawba chain. So we're in non-native blue cat water, non-native flathead water. And typically this is when a lot of our spawning happens. Now I've said before, spawning happens in different times in different places around the country. So there's a lot of variables that come into play. But all of you fishermen are gonna experience some level of this at some point. As I've said before, the great equalizer is fishing all day. At some point, the fish do eat. Don't get me wrong, but the great equalizer is fishing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You'll catch some fish that way. Obviously, we don't have the luxury or the patience to do that as human beings. So we have to get out there and fish when we can, fish when we're available, have the availability to go. And, it can be tough. It can be tough to catch fish right now. So that's still going on. With that said, yesterday's trip, I caught some fish, had a good day for this time of the year. I think it was only 6 or 7 fish, but the 5 of them were in the teens. So it was a good catch for this time of the year. 2 of them were very lethargic males, and it was interesting to get these 16, 17 pound fish that were not putting up a big fight. A month ago pre-spawn, these fish would have been going nuts when you got them in the boat, and they were beat up and they just acted tired. And that may be a good sign that maybe some of this spawning stuff is finally starting to slow down. So there's a bright little star there of goodness. But overall, the fishing was still pretty slow. It was a bite that from right before daylight, we were out on the water at about 5 to beat the heat, and we caught fish till about 8 o'clock. And like I said, it wasn't on fire. Everything I was using was cut bait, and I was just anchored up. And I was able to find a pocket of fish. Now, the day before that, was out on a guide trip, trolling, dragging baits, and we covered a lot of water, and we picked off a few channel cats, and I think we had a small blue in there. So that day was more indicative of what's going on widespread with the spawn right now. So it kind of puts it in perspective. I'm out here today playing around, no guide trip today. Part of it is getting the Lund back on the water. I'll tell you what all has been going on with it. And I'm just messing around with some suspended baits. I always try this time of the year. It's the most horrible time of the year to do it, in my opinion, because generally the bite's not that good. I always say if you're going to experiment with something, experiment when the fishing's good. It'll tell you if it works or not. But going a little bit more over the technique than I am anything. So we got some baits on the bottom. We got some baits suspended, and the fishing's been slow. I think I've caught 2 fish. So not exactly good. Dragging all cut bait, no chicken, none of that stuff yet. So I think that time's a-coming. But it's it's typical spawn fishing. The other thing is the plant that is behind me that you can hear running, normally is not running. And it's a coal fire plant, which means they burn coal to produce steam to turn the turbines, and the scrubber's running, and it's running because it's unseasonably warm for this time of the year. Nothing totally crazy, but we're about 5 to 7 degrees above normal in what our temperatures are. And I personally don't know exactly what the effect is on the fishing, except making it miserable out here, especially here in the southeast with the high dew points we have. It's going to get nasty here later in the day, but you know, that's something a bunch of y'all are facing around the country is, you know, the heat and it affecting you when you want to go fishing. The good news is it may drive you to night fishing. We're coming off of a really bright moon where I went and did some bank fishing a couple of times. I filmed some of those videos. I'll have those up. And we caught some fish right at sunset as the moon was rising. And whether that was an impact of the moon, I don't know, but after that it was cricket, so it was kind of interesting. Nothing but channel catfish, nothing super exciting. I think my son caught actually the first gar he's ever caught, which I found to be surprising. Out of the thousands of fish, and God only knows how many different species, it was the first time he's ever caught a gar, so we had that going on. But anyway, to the boat. The reason I'm on the Lund, if you follow some of my shorts and some other stuff I had on a while back, I had the Lund overheated, and this was back in May, early May, I believe. Had come in from had finished up again. I was fishing by myself, and was doing some prospecting before some trips, and had an alarm go off and shut the motor down. Checked everything, see what was going on, went back, noticed it wasn't peeing. And what that means is, for you guys that are not boaters, there's a little nozzle, some people call it a tail, a pee tube, whatever you want to call it. It's basically water sprays out of it, and it's about a 90% indicator that your cooling system is functioning. What happens on a boat is water is sucked in through the foot where the propeller goes into the water by an impeller, a water pump, and it's pushed through the motor. And the little telltale is usually on the bottom of the block, and it's showing that water is making it all the way through and out to the other side. Now, it can get blocked up, it can get clogged up, and everything still be circulating fine, but it's a good indicator. So I tried to clean it out, make sure everything, but I had a feeling something was up at that point. And I trolled for a while, fish, started it back up, ran just a little bit, alarm went off, shut it right back down. So making sure, you know, and if you have that deal, on this Honda, luckily, it will shut down after, I think, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. It's got an automatic shut off, which is great. Don't ever run your motor when you get an overheating alarm, because the alarm goes off on the fringe of when it gets bad, and if you were to bypass it or keep going, it could do serious damage. So anyway, got back, put an impeller in it, and dropped it in the lake, went out, ran it. It went fine. The one thing with putting the impeller in, and I messed up, I thought I ordered a Honda factory impeller, and I ended up getting an Amazon impeller. We know how this story's going to end. Impellers, it looked the same. Everything looked pretty close. Of course, when you take one out, the fins are going to be bent on it. When you get a new one, they're perfectly straight. But it looked pretty good. You know, the key for it was in much better shape than the key that was in the old one. And so I put it in. The one thing I noticed, though, when I put it down onto the shaft, these things slide down a metal shaft that goes up into your motor that turns. This is what drives it. It went on kind of tough. It was hard to get it registered onto the metal key. And I didn't pay it a lot of attention. I figured, maybe it's just rougher than I remember. But anyway, got it on there, dropped it in the lake, fished it, ran it. It worked great. Ran it the next day on a guide trip. We fished all day. And as we rolled up to the dock to finish, we were done. After a 6-hour trip, pulling up, the alarm goes off. And I'm like, what the heck? I thought it may have been the thermostats. Maybe the thermostats were bad. So I had pulled the thermostats when I had the other overheating issue, just to troubleshoot everything. Dropped them in a pot of water, boom. And that's a little trick you can do there, is drop them in a pot of boiling water, and you will see them actually open up. It tells you your thermostats are good, nothing's weird on them. I thought maybe it was that. Checked that again, made sure nothing was clogged up, and I parked it. I parked it. So all the videos that you've seen recently with me on the skiff, I went back to the skiff. I had guide trips stacked up in May. I mean, I don't know how many days we ended up running in May. It's a busy time. And I just said, I'll deal with that later. And parked the boat and just ran the skiff. Shot some videos while I was doing it. And I had taken the skiff down to the coast, was fishing down there, and finally got back day before yesterday. And finally ordered a new impeller. I said, I'm gonna put a new impeller in this thing. I dropped the foot off, looked at it, and I said, maybe it looks like the impeller was spinning on the key. And don't know what all the dynamics are there. If it didn't totally fit into that foot properly, it may put tension on it and cause it to wear out on it. Anyway, I put the old impeller back in with the new key and dropped it in, put the foot back on it. Dropped it in yesterday. I'm waiting on the new one to get here, by the way. I thought it was coming yesterday. I had the date wrong, and this is a Honda made impeller for this motor. So we're skipping past any of the problems with the Chinese made, which is probably made in China anyway, or probably made in Japan, knowing Honda. But anyway, I put the old one back in. I said, I'm gonna see if everything functions and works. So dropped it in the lake last night, ran it for about 45 minutes, went through several cycles of getting up on plane, getting off plane, and everything ran fine. So I wanted to bring it out here today. Didn't want to bring it on a guide trip yet until I troubleshooted and put the new impeller in, but everything's working fine. So that's kind of what happened. I got a feeling that impeller I got was not exactly the right size for the pump housing. I think it may have been a little bit too tall is the best way to describe it, and there might have been some rubbing and some tension there, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the rubber was too soft. I don't know. I got a factory spec one coming to me, but that's why you haven't seen the Lund in any videos. And it's working fine. I mean, the motor runs fine outside of just, you know, the impeller, something you have to put into every motor. They will wear out. I think they say to replace them every 200 hours. Historically, I've been real bad on my Suzuki motors and probably go 400, 500, 600 hours on them. So they can last a long time. You know, it's one of those things that's really a pretty easy maintenance fix. Even if you take your boat to somebody to do it, it's not horribly expensive, and you can do it yourself too. It's a little, depending on your motor, there's some stuff you have to do with the shifter. It's not that big of a deal really to drop the foot, pull that thing out, and swap it out if you want to do it yourself. So anyway, that's kind of what's been going on. I'm back on the water fishing. I'm going to be fishing hard here for a couple weeks. Going to ICAST in July, the big worldwide fishing show. So I'll be there checking out some stuff. Last year was really informative with the lithium-ion batteries, boat batteries. I've got a bunch of videos out about that already, and some new ones coming out, so stay tuned for those. But that's kind of what's going on. Just wanted to bring you up to date on everything going on, what's going on with the spawn, and what y'all can do to keep your spirits high. It's going to get better, folks. It's going to get better. I think you're going to see more and more bigger fish showing up. I think you're just going to see more and more fish showing up depending on where you're at in the country as we get further into July. So anyway, appreciate you checking it out, stopping by to listen, and we'll catch you out on the water.